Mark Zuckerberg has admitted that Facebook censored true information. So why are we creating a censorship industrial complex that will be able to do that to all of us whenever it wants? Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom. Truth that will probably be obscured by the censorship industrial complex, and freedom that will be curtailed by endless bureaucracies that want to stick their nose right in your life hole. Well, here we don't tolerate that. That's why it's important you turn on the notification bell right now. We make this content every single day. We want you to watch all of it so we can stay informed together about issues that matter, like Mark Zuckerberg admitting in his brilliant interview with Lex Friedman that Facebook censored information that turned out to be debatable or true. That doesn't seem like the right way to treat information, does it? This might be true, or it is true. Censor it. That's ridiculous. And yet more and more of this is going to be happening. That's why I'm appearing live with Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi to talk about the censorship industrial complex. There's a link in the description if you want to get tickets. And if you fancy just having a bit of a laugh because everything's so crazy, watch my stand-up special, Brandemic. Self-produced, uncensored, available now. There's a link in the description. But right away, let's get into this story and watch what Zuckerberg said to Friedman that started us off on this trail of inquiry.
So misinformation, I think, has been a really tricky one because there are things that are kind of obviously false, right, that are maybe factual, but may not be harmful. So it's like, all right, are you going to censor someone for just being wrong? It's, if there's no kind of harm implication of what they're doing, I think there's a bunch of real kind of issues and challenges there. But then I think that there are other places where it is, just take some of the stuff around COVID earlier on in the pandemic, where there were, real health implications, but there hadn't been time to fully vet a bunch of the scientific assumptions. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of the kind of establishment on that, kind of waffled on a bunch of facts and, asked for a bunch of things to be censored that in retrospect ended up being, more debatable or true. And that stuff is really tough, right? And really undermines trust. And
it does undermine trust, and it is indeed tough. So we certainly shouldn't create models that are able to continue to behave in that way. In retrospect, let me know in the chat in the comments, do you think that what should have happened is that views from all sides of the scientific and sociological spectrum ought to have been included and a consensus formed around it? Because what actually happened is assumptions were made that were beneficial to the state and their ability to regulate and impose law and order, and to various industries, but most notably and obviously the pharmaceutical industry. Now, it's not a conspiracy theory to say that the information was presented in a way that was beneficial to the state and beneficial to the pharmaceutical industry. It doesn't mean that they even manipulatively and deliberately did it. There is such a thing as unconscious bias. We've had on our show over on Rumble, Robert F. Kennedy, and his views are, as I know a lot of yours are, a little more pronounced, shall we say, than that. A little more advanced of the position that I'm currently sharing with you on YouTube for obvious reasons. The fact is, this censorship industrial complex already exists. YouTube already has a relationship with the WHO. YouTube's guidelines, as you're already aware, on topics like this are taken directly from the WHO. That is, in fact, one of the spokes in the wheel of the censorship industrial complex. Let's get into a little more detail now so that we can together form a consensus around how information should be regulated. At the moment, my perspective is it ought not be controlled and we ought to decide for ourselves. This is by our friend Michael Schellenberger, and again, if you want to see me live with him, there's a link in the description. Thank you. Governments around the world are cracking down on free speech. What they are demanding includes the ability to read private encrypted text messages and invade homes in search of wrong speech. In order to do that, they have to create a state of fear, don't they? They have to say there's this massive threat, there's so much hate speech, there's so much prejudice and bigotry. And I'm not suggesting there isn't hatred, prejudice and bigotry. Plainly, there is. We're not debating or doubting that those things exist. It's just that we believe they're being highlighted where it's germane and apposite and beneficial to the interests of the powerful, for want of a better phrase, and being ignored if it can't be mobilised in order to justify censorship and measures of control. Let me know what you think, though. Their demands thus go far beyond what the censorship industrial complex was able to get away with over the last 6 years. Across thousands of pages of attorneys general lawsuits, thousands of pages of congressional reports and testimony, and hundreds of pages of Twitter and Facebook Facebook files themselves, it's clear that here was a highly coordinated campaign by top White House officials, government agencies, and government-funded contractors to demand Twitter, Facebook, and other social media companies censor, in their own words, often true content, including about drug side effects, both to prevent the public from seeing it, but also to spread misinformation on behalf of a political agenda. It's beyond irony that the category of misinformation itself has been created in order, I believe, to perpetuate misinformation, in order that the state or certain other establishment or elite interests can convey their message to you, to us. The category of mis, dis, and malinformation has been created so that true and debatable information can be censored. That, as you are already aware, is literally Orwellian. Words are starting to be changed. The meaning of words is being altered in order to expedite measures that would have been unthinkable, as Schellenberger says, just a few years ago. The picture many of us have of journalists is Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman in All the President's Men. He clearly thinks that him and Matt Taibbi are like, we're the new Redford and Huffman. Yeah, we're breaking down barriers, man. Or the journalists in Spotlight, She Said, and The Post. They are dogged seekers of truth, determined to overcome any obstacle in their way of discovering it and reporting it to the world. They advocate giving voice to the voiceless and uncovering secretive and dangerous abuses of power by everyone from senior government officials to powerful corporate executives to religious leaders. Because of our new economic models, we have new economic partners. Here's an advert from one of them, and look at how funny I've made it, and thank me for it in the comments below by staying and watching it. Cheers. Hello there, you awakening wonders. Today's show is brought to you by Manscaped, who are the best in men's below the waist and below the snout and within the ear grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools like our analysis for your family jewels. Manscaped's performance package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. You get the lawnmower. This trimmer is the future of grooming, and some say the greatest ball trimmer ever. You get the Weed Whacker crop preserver ball deodorant, although if there is an odour, I mean, there just shouldn't be an odour on your balls. But if there is, this will rid you of it. The Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. In this case, the goodies are the products, not your reproductive organs. Join over 7 million men worldwide, not literally, that would be unhygienic, you'd be ankle deep in pubic hair, who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BRAND at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code BRAND. Oh, it's really actually quite satisfying because you can hear it. Can you hear that? That's the sound of youth returning. But the real world behaviour of many journalists today at top news media companies is the exact opposite. They plot secretly with the Aspen Institute, each other, and social media executives about how to kill stories damaging to the president. And they help former CIA directors and fellows spread ridiculous conspiracy theories, including that Russians stole the 2016 election, controlled Donald Trump through a video of prostitutes urinating on him, and somehow had stolen Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, all of that is a bit mental and ridiculous in retrospect, and also for me is the scalpel that we can use to cut away the idea that the Democrat Party are the representatives of righteousness, justice, and ordinary people. The idea that they are led by any incentives other than how to best serve the donor class is, to me, ridiculous at this point. Rather than quote from different sides, these journalists denounce their enemies. They dismissed as racist and as a debunked conspiracy theory that COVID-19 might have escaped from a Chinese lab, while insisting that it was somehow less racist and far-fetched to believe the virus travelled 1,000 miles from the countryside before sickening someone at a live wet market. And they demanded that Twitter deplatform disfavoured voices like Twitter Files reporter Alex Berenson. I guess what Michael Schellenberger is pointing out is the necessity for principles and values that don't alter depending on where you stand in the argument. Censorship is a great example of that. If you're against censorship, it means that you've got to allow people to criticise things that you believe to be true in order to achieve a mutual consensus. That's what that value means. If you say, oh, actually, I do believe in censorship now, I didn't a few years ago when it wasn't convenient. This is the problem that we're facing now, a kind of a moral abyss at the heart of government and at the heart of all of our institutions. There's a warping of reality taking place. When you couple a more grounded story like this about the observable establishment of the censorship industrial complex achieved through the consensus of government and big tech platforms, then add to it, UFOs seem to be real now. Don't you recognise that things have really got to change? Let me know in the chat. Why do so many journalists participate participate in the war on free speech, including the freest social media platform, Twitter. Last summer, Berenson released documents showing reporters from CNN and Axios urging Twitter to suspend Berenson for criticising vaccines. It's like librarians burning books, he told Public yesterday. Why are journalists attacking journalists? Yeah, I don't understand that at all. It's become so madly tribalised and hysterical that people are willing to shut down perfectly reasonable opposing perspectives. Because of the age I am, the experience I've had, I remember if someone's right-wing or left-wing, it's, oh, that's interesting. It's not like, shut that person down. And conspiracy theories were either something you treated with whimsy or investigated seriously, depending on your perspective. Not, don't you say that, and then try to bolt it onto something truly nefarious like racism or anti-Semitism in order to shut it down. For me, what I feel like we're experiencing is a time of real sanitization, not in order to generate safety, but in order to generate control. Recently, I was watching Harry Potter 5, which is my main reference point these days. And when Imelda Staunton's character comes into Hogwarts, it's with the pretense of making things safer, more secure and regulated. But what she of course actually does is removes magic. And this is happening across our culture. We're being closed down, shut down, sanitized, a kind of astringent antiseptic being applied to everything. But the cost of that is the removal of the rather viscous and effervescent quality that human beings have when we're allowed to rub against one another. I don't mean that literally, I mean psychologically. It's clear there are both organic, cultural and ideological reasons as well as partisan political motivations, but there are also financial ones. Consider the mass media attacks on Joe Rogan, whose podcasting model has drawn viewers away from traditional media and upended the economics of the news industry. In other words, it's not just that independent Substack journalists like Berenson threatens establishment orthodoxies, it's also that we threaten the media's credibility and viability. That is precisely what's happening. Where this coalesces neatly is the issue of Tucker Carlson versus Fox News. Tucker Carlson saying the kind of stuff he used to be able to say on Fox News. Fox News want to shut him down and sue him for both economic and ideological reasons. Mainstream media is quaking now because of new models, independent media organisations like ours or Lex Fridman. The platforms like Twitter and Facebook and Google that have themselves now become oligarchical and are in league with the state necessarily, and some of them, as you're aware, had funding from the state, oddly early stages of their inception. And now what's essentially being attempted is how do we assert control in an almost entirely alien landscape. So it's not just ideological, as Schellenberger points out, it's also economic. But economics is the dominant ideology of our time. If you threaten their financial interests, you're threatening the heart of their cathedral. Meanwhile, everyone from President Joe Biden to former President Barack Obama is actively promoting the big lie that hate, including anti-Semitism, is rising in a transparent effort to give governments more power to censor. Of course, they have to amplify the threat to legitimise the action that will lead to censorship. You remember this in the post-9/11 environment. New measures of security and surveillance were introduced. Now that that threat seems to have been somewhat lifted or somewhat diluted, have the measures changed? Of course they haven't. In fact, when it came for time to review the bill that allowed the government to surveil Americans abroad and at home, they didn't review it or change it, citing Mexican drug cartels as the reason that these surveillance measures would have to remain in place. Governments don't give up power, corporations don't give up profit, they find reasons to justify continuing the pursuit of both of those things. At the same time, resistance to government censorship and propaganda is rising worldwide. Free speech advocates are fighting back in every one of the nations where crackdowns are underway. The picture we had of mainstream news reporters speaking truth to power is no longer accurate. More frequently than not, reporters from those same institutions speak power against truth. The evidence for the censorship industrial complex is abundant, and they know it because they're part of it. The media's problem is not that the censorship conspiracy is unproven, it is that we proved it. It has been proven. There is a censorship industrial complex. Mark Zuckerberg himself, who of course was in correspondence with Fauci during the pandemic, asking how he could help, has now done a public mea culpa in a new alternative media space, the brilliant podcast of Lex Fridman. The world is changing, and if we continue to act with integrity and authenticity, the correct changes will be given a chance to flourish. But of course there is an oppositional force. Those old institutions aren't going to give up without a fight. That's why you're seeing Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger sat before congressional committees being treated like criminals. That's why I am publicly smeared. That's why Joe Rogan is publicly smeared, because they recognize, oh no, they can talk directly to people. Our market, our economic model. We, of course, have economic interests ourselves, but hopefully they do not override our ideological interests and our desire to connect with you truthfully and openly and learn from you and share with you, because I'm on this planet with you and I'm frightened as well. And I know that on my own, I'm not enough, and that on my own, I will fail. That's why I need you to believe in us the same way that we're trying to believe in you, so that we can confront unprecedented power. It truly is. For the first time, there is the opportunity to impose global measures on entire populations. We talk about it every single day on our channel. We talk about it every single day on Rumble. I have a laugh about it in my comedy special. There's a link to that in the description if you want to watch it. And if you want to see me, Taibbi and Schellenberger chat about this stuff, although I feel like they'll be talking more because I'm sort of a facilitator, I'll just be going, then you can join us for that event. Please turn on the notification bell and subscribe, because we make this stuff every day and we need your support. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. But more important than any of that is that you please stay free.